Welcome, sales team leaders, to STEAMroom. This is session 6. You might be listening to this on Steamcast, which of course is the audio recording. And as we say, this is about sales team leadership that is pertinent to what is going on across all real estate markets across Australia and New Zealand at this point in time. And I can say that now we're seeing, in Australia at least, lots of lockdown activity. Some states are escaping. It's off, it's on, it's off, it's on. The reality is that we just have to deal with this situation as it plays out, which is probably it is what I want to talk about today. And some of the things that you can do, but most importantly, how you can control your outcomes moving forward. You know, when you look at the whole real estate equation, it is one that's fairly liquid. You know, leadership is liquid. We've got to have patience and foresight. So we've got to know when to be patient versus impatient. What does that mean? Well, you just deal with the situation as it presents itself. You know, I was only watching with a lot of the football codes, whether it be the NRL, or the AFL, which is the one that I follow. Lots of talk, you know, in the last couple of days when they've just had to move people almost instantly away from the area that they're in this case, the state that they're in, into another safe state that who knows how long it's going to be safe for anyway, with all the COVID activity that's occurring in and around Australia domestically. And the coaches are just saying, you know, one in particular that I've got a lot of respect for, is they're asking him questions in a projected manner, and he just looks at them and he says, my head isn't even there. At the moment, we have to deal with what's in front of us on an almost daily basis, and sometimes to an almost hourly basis. He said things are changing as they come. And I would like to suggest the same to us as sales team leaders, that we have to deal with situations as they present themselves, and as best we can. The major theme, if you like, this month, the very thing that we talked about in the last session here, was planning meetings. And in planning meetings, I say that they need to be themed up. So if there is a theme that I have for STEAM this month, it's about projecting and understanding, or putting plans in place so that you can move into a space where you are proactive more so than reactive. Now, that's hard to do, especially when conditions and climates are changing so readily and so constantly. But you still need to act in a proactive sense. As we say very, very clearly, the leader always knows what's going on, always knows the next move to make. So if you look at the current situation that you've got, if you've just moved into lockdown, you're going to have a couple of things at odds. Of course, you're going to have those salespeople that, you know, do I have them working from home, or do I have them working at the office? And of course, you know, you're looking, I've no doubt, you're looking at some of your salespeople and thinking, with them working from home, not on a month of Sundays. I have enough difficulty monitoring, managing and mentoring some sales professionals when they're at the office, let alone when they're at home and left to their own devices. And then, of course, there's a whole lot of things that you might be thinking of. What deals have been done? What second inspections do we have to go out? How do we go and negotiate contracts? Are we able to conduct listing presentations? How do we get something that's been scheduled for auction across to sale, and how does that work in and around all of this activity where we've got to run either Zoom meetings or some of these online auction software programs that are available? I think they're all fantastic. But to me, I think the place that you start, and I think that's the hardest part, where do I start, is understanding the things that you can control. So if I was to put leadership into a place of serious action, the place you start is you need to sit down with a piece of paper and write down all of the things that you believe have to be addressed, But importantly, you need to run a prioritization on that which matters. And by my book and on my calculations, there is no better measure that you can take other than to focus very succinctly on the procurement of a quick 10 listings. There is no watering down of the maxim that I've shared with all leaders for dozens of years. And that is, if you control the incoming listing flow, if you are getting more listings, you simply can't get into trouble. And let's face it, this is about the only facet of what lies in front of us that we are offered any degree of control around. You know, if you start with a focus on your active property sellers list. I have one leader up in Sydney just last week, and this is a business that is flourishing. The sales team leader, who also happens to be the CEO, who's the founder of the company, has been relishing for a number of years the moment that's upon us now, when we are focused very clearly on his extraction from the front line of sales. So we've done all the things that we should have done through Cream. We've got a great little structure in there. The way in which people are remunerated is equitable. It's conducive to him withdrawing from the front, no longer competing with his salespeople, giving them the opportunities and in fact encouraging them around the productivity, because every dollar that comes in is relatively profitable. And we've been running that for some time. So the business has been profitable. There is good cash reserves. Its security is undoubted. So all of those things aren't worrying this particular leader, aside from the fact that the idea of him withdrawing from the front line, from being on the tools, from listing and selling, is now threatened. And then, you know, if the conditions continue for a protracted period of time and they don't have the productivity that they should have, then the very existence of the company can start to be compromised. I don't believe it to be threatened, but I can understand how he feels. And I said to that leader, I said, look, you've just got to focus on what you can control. And you've just got to rely on those maxims that make sense. I said, how many opportunities for listings exist in terms of your active property sellers, or listings to get, whatever you might call it? And it just so happens that it's the razzmatazz time in and around planning meetings. So that list was currently available. He knows to exhaust that list to get as much, or anyone that so much as even remotely looks like they're planning a move that falls onto that list, that we know that those sellers are plausibly imminent. They fall onto that list, and he had knocking on the door of about 50 opportunities. That which tells me that, you know, as we're moving forward, that we're most likely headed toward an oversupplied market. Notwithstanding that, my point to him was, I said, would you feel better? Because what's happening is the number of sales that they're making is exceeding the number of listings that they have. This is not just one office that this is occurring in. I'm seeing this in a number of them. So they've got strong indications of quite a number of properties that are coming to the market but are not coming. Sales are exceeding incoming listings. This tells me that there's some issues on the way. But why don't we just leave that alone for a moment and boil it down to this? My question to that leader was this: if you had more incoming listings, if your listings were spiking, would you feel better? He said, yeah, which leads me to a maxim that I've shared with many leaders for dozens of years. I do not let go of this, and it's a very simple maxim. I've yet to encounter a problem in a real estate sales business that can't be solved with a quick 10 sales. And a quick 10 sales starts with a quick 10 listings or a quick dozen listings, whatever way you want to look at it. So I just said to him, I said, look, mate, what you've got to do is focus on those listings. You've got to look at what is blocking them, and we've got to take a leaf from the pulpit by which we, from the book on the pulpit, from where we preach to our own salespeople, and just basically say, get the prioritization right, get the focus right, get the energy into that focus right, because what you focus on grows. So as a leader now, if you've got any issues that are threatening the business, and I say this all the time, there's lots of balls that you juggle in leading sales teams. The one ball you can never, ever, ever afford to drop is that of prospecting, which is a direct link to new incoming listings. So I implore you right now, once you get off from this recording, or if you're driving into the office, listening to it, and you're thinking, what do I do? What do I do about inspiring the team? If you've got this on the way in to a sales meeting, well, what you do is you put all of your energy into listings that are coming up. You address them one by one, and you look at all the actions that you can take to absolutely ensure that you have every plausible chance of winning that business on the right terms and conditions. And that, of course, means at an undiscounted, mitigate any percentage discounts on fee, and avoid any giveaways when it comes to investment in marketing or any other sundry expenses. Now, from what I'm seeing, there are some threats around this at the moment, because the way that a lot of real estate agents are countering this behavior is they're very quick or eager to jump out there and suggest that you should be looking at off-market listings. Now, off-market listings by their very nature defy the principles of maximizing or offering the opportunity to maximize the market value by virtue of the fact that their perception hasn't been enhanced, or having the property look at least its very best. So I say, if you don't have any marketing out there on the property, if you haven't weaved the perception that it needs to have, you're running the risk of devaluing the property. Enough said, because the reality is I can theorize about this as much as I like, but that's not necessarily translating to missed opportunities. So to avert those missed opportunities, you've got to look at the very thing that's causing, in some cases, some sellers to offer their property for sale with another agent for a limited period of time. That agent would never be their choice in normal conditions, but the agent has lured them in by saying, whack it on off market, and we might get the job done fairly quickly. And of course, they're doing this because they're indicating they have specific buyers, and then creating the inference that you may not have access to those buyers, or you may not have yet met that buyer. Now, I totally disagree with this, but again, it doesn't matter. It still falls down to us as the leader to make sure that we intervene, and the communication, the perception of your product and your brand and where it sits with all the sellers is something that you can control as a leader. So again, you need to have that extensive list of active property sellers. You need to be as best you can across the motive of each individually. If that question hasn't properly been asked, even if it falls down to the point, should you deem it necessary, where you might even call the owner of that property yourself and have discussions in and around their reasons for selling, their motive for selling. Then it falls in terms of communication. I alluded to this last week, but it's absolutely imperative that you jump in and you make sure that, as well as the direct contact, which you might need to intervene as a leader to get these across the line, remembering, I don't care who does it, I don't care how it's done. The name of the game here at the moment is a laser focus on a quick 10 listings to counter or mitigate any of the adverse conditions that are brought about by lockdowns, brought about by a change in market, brought about by a lack of confidence, brought about by reluctance or procrastination for sellers to put their properties on the market because they can't find them. It's just a simple standoff that needs to be countered. So first things first, you need to get the list and see all of the sellers that are there. You then need to be across their reasons for selling, their motives for selling. This is tantamount, because in your discussions, if you can lock in, if your discussions are centric to their motive, then there's going to be an easing of them to be cooperative and to choose you to list, because you are demonstrating that you care or an interest in what they're trying to do, not purely that fact that they need to sell at some stage and what they need to sell for. You see, that price reality, for my mind, only plays a part in terms of the motive. Then we need to get into the passive contact. So on top of it, and for me, this is the wonderful way for the brand to intervene and to position itself relationship-wise with that customer, where you can start to supersede some of these things that are occurring around the offering, or individual salespeople going in and saying, let's list it off market, I've already got a buyer, and that sort of thing. So from the company needs to come almost straight away from you as the sales team leader. Now, this is one that I sent out with one of our leaders just this weekend. If you're on our STL, our sales team leadership program, and inside of Steam, please call me and I can give you access to these letters. But in passive contact, on top of direct contact from the listing salesperson and direct contact from you as the sales team leader, if you need to intervene, we need to have a string of information which is constantly ebbing and flowing between you and active property sellers or incumbent listings that you are looking to get on the market. The first is the property sellers research guide. I did mention this in a recent conversation. Some of you, if you don't have that, you can use a pre-listing kit, but we use the property sellers research guide, which shows property sellers how to arrive at comparative value independent of real estate agents, and explains where our value proposition is as real estate agents. And that, of course, is inside of our professional capacity. That needs to go out, if it didn't already go out, in form of a guise of a pre-listing kit or ahead of a listing presentation. The second thing is SMS communicating sales that are made in real time inside the agency. Now, if you're not making, 2 or 3 sales a week, you can still use past sales, but the reality is you've got to have representation of moving owners on. Now, I don't like those messages to go out any more than every 72 hours. So roughly twice a week, you want to see those messages going out where sellers are seeing that activity move. They're seeing that you're moving people. Again, I would lean towards SMS text messages that are centric to the motives, to satisfying motives for our sellers, not so much focusing on price. You might also send the to-view. I think a to-view website, individual property websites, these can be offered to property sellers independent of entering into any market program. They can be offered free of charge if you're one of our property marketer clients. So you can send these, and these can be used to advertise the property in an off-market fashion without committing them up to the major portals. And they can see that you can do this without them having to invest money in it. To my mind, this is an offering that counters other agents that might be offering the off-market opportunity. It shows that you have the capacity, you have the facility to be able to do that, and in a better light than your competitor might have. You also need to be inviting them to open for inspections that you have playing out. And again, if you're in lockdown and you can't conduct open for inspections at this point in time, you can still promote it with the inspections being moved from being open to the public between certain times to actually having to be booked. Now, if I've got prospective sellers and I've listed a property nearby and they want to look at that property in comparison to theirs before putting theirs on the market, I'm more than happy for them to respond to that invite, and I'm more than happy to take them out so that they can run that comparison. A market roundup, which is of course your activity that's occurring in the market, and that's important. Definitely recommendations and accolades. I've said this before, stay away from the bigger portals, the bigger rating portals, like, Rate My Agent and the like, and even the one that you see on realestate.com over here in Australia, but Rate My Agent's also in New Zealand. The reason I say don't be sending those out to your prospective sellers is, unfortunately, those portals also promote your competitors, and you're drawing that client's attention to your competition, which I believe is totally unnecessary. Now, you might think, oh, well, I'm better than them, I'm the number one in the area. Yes, but what if they're offering discounted fees, offering other things that can be perceived incorrectly, but enough for you to lose the business? I say don't advertise your competition unnecessarily. If you use our accolade system or something similar, and you're showing them those recommendations that are only centric again to you and your brand and your sales prowess and your sales results, then that's fine. Now, finally, here's the big one. And I did talk about this when COVID first hit our shores, and that is that you need to start be very focused on buyers and compiling those buyers into spreadsheets around certain styles of properties and definitely certain price brackets. And the moment you have an opportunity where you run a presentation, as soon as is practicable, a letter needs to go out informing those prospective sellers, those active property sellers, of the buyers that you have right now, that you can show right now, even if they wanted to do that without committing the property to any marketing, if they wanted to do it in an off-market fashion. You simply have to do this. And you have to have that representation so that you don't have a competitor get under your guard, get hold of the property for a period of time and sell it right from under your talons, where you probably had it, simply because they presented a buyer under the pretense that they had exclusivity around the buyer. So again, as a leader, I'd be totally focused on all these things. Give me my list. Give me my list of buyers. What buyers do we have? What's the motive on all these ones that are coming on? What are all the actions that we can take? What are all the passive things that we can do to ensure that in the selection phase, we are at the top of the heap? We sit out front. So please put all of your energy into that. If you've got any difficulty with it, give me a call. I'm more than happy to run you through some of the things we need to put in place. And finally, what we're going to have is what we call the 4 possible outcomes. So this is being developed now inside of Prospector 4. Whenever one of your salespeople goes and conducts a listing presentation, we say that there only can be 4 possible outcomes from this. The first, of course, is that they list it, which is the ideal. This should initiate a system, a process of communication that comes from the company. And we're going to show you how you build that in Prospector 4, where the relationship between the brand and the client is stronger, or at the very least as strong as between the listing salesperson and that client. This is not because we want to disenfranchise the salesperson. This is because we want to bring the client closer into the brand, and we can develop a protracted relationship over a number of years, which saves the salesperson having to worry about that when they go back into dormancy, and we can manage that through. So that's the first outcome. The second outcome is that you miss the listing and it goes to another agency. Again, this should initiate a series of communications that emanates from the company, in some cases on behalf of the listing salesperson. Certainly some of that communication should come from you as the sales team leader, so that they know that they've got a point of contact should the relationship have deteriorated with the listing salesperson or the wannabe listing salesperson. The third outcome is that they are still in a state of gestation. So they're still in the selection phase and haven't made a choice. So that is actually what I'm talking about there with the passive contacts. So there'll be some other stuff in there, not least of which is inviting them to the open for inspection, doing the buyer matching, sending them out the TwoView website. So that is the third outcome that we talked about inside of the passive contact. And the fourth and final one is that they are not selling, that they are indeed in dormancy, or they've had a change of heart and decided not to sell, They sit inside your database. These are in your contact list component of your database because you're yet to do business with them, or you may have done business in the past, and they are just communicated with regularly. In particular, they're receiving the market roundup and the like, and everything's hunky-dory. So that's that, and that's what we need to focus on. That's the only thing you can control at the moment. Get your energy in place, get yourself a quick 10 listings, and everything will make a whole lot more sense. Now, before I go, there's another area, and I'll focus on this a little bit more, but I started doing this with some salespeople this week. And this is another source of listings that could be coming your way should you put a bit of energy into it immediately, like today. And that is, of course, recent sales. So you'll know that the market in most areas right across Australia and New Zealand has bolstered or has, been undersupplied. And as a result, prices have escalated. This has been predominantly in the last 3 years. So I would be focused on calling all of those new owners right now, because some of them may have overcommitted. Some of them have not yet realized or are now coming to the realization that they bought at the peak of the market. And some of them may well have overcommitted. Now, if they've done this, as strange as this might sound, you'll rarely hear back from them if they've decided they've made a mistake and they want to sell it immediately. Part of this has to do with the fact that they're a little bit embarrassed at having overcommitted or made a mistake. So it is that we've just got to call them back. So I would just assign my salespeople to this, certainly my prospectors to this. And the conversation goes pretty much like this. I just ring them up and I say, hi, my name's Mark Dwyer. If I'm a sales associate, you don't know me. I'm a sales associate here at ABC Real Estate. Look, I know that you bought the property back in, oh goodness me, it looks like 2018, close to Christmas there. How have you found it? And you just, welcome. I hope it's been pretty good. And they start talking about it now. Even there, they might say, well, as a matter of fact, we don't really like it. We're thinking of moving. Good, perfect, you're on the way. But of course, if they start to say, oh, not bad, and they're having a bit of a chat, then I might just break into, look, at the moment, we've got more buyers than we have available property. Do you want to sell it? I interrupt myself mid-sentence and just go, do you want to sell it? And the reason I spring that upon them is because if they're in the space that they want to sell it, they kind of answer it straight away. They go kind of, yeah. Matter of fact, we do. Whereas if I kind of make it a little bit formal, now I was just wondering whether you're considering maybe making a move. They just don't respond to that, not least of which is that thing that I said just a moment ago, they're a little bit embarrassed by it. So you just kind of catch them on it. Now, the outcome of that can go a number of ways. Some of them might just say yes, wondering, isn't it strange that you've called? We've decided we want to move or whatever. That's the ideal one, of course. Some of them might just say straight out, no, not. Why on earth would you ask that? I just got here. To which I say, yeah, I realise that. But, we're real estate agents. And the moment you buy something, we don't make any money out of you staying. So we're just going to keep asking you. And you might have a giggle and move from there. Or you might say, they go, what would give you that idea? I just bought it. I say, well, it sounds to me like you love the place that much. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to let you stay. And I just let them calm down. Yep. But believe you me, you can't get into any trouble. You can establish a good relationship. It is a good touch point. This bolsters them up inside of the database, but you will also find sellers there. So please have a listen to it. My name's Mark Dwyer. This is Sales Team Leadership. I hope you've enjoyed this installation. I'll catch you again. Next week, we will start to talk about the sales inquiry log. Again, everything at the moment is centric to bolstering your listing numbers. I cannot impress upon you as sales team leaders right now that more than ever before, the primary, the secondary, the focus, and what you focus on grows is important, is getting more listings. The more you list, the more you sell. The more you list, the more you sell. It's pretty simple. Get control of those listings and get everything functioning the right day. Again, my name's Mark Dwyer. This has been Steamcast if you're listening to it on a recording, or STEAMroom if you're watching the visuals. You can reach me Mark with a K at corporatemanager.com.au, or my phone number +61 410 592 165. And I look forward to seeing you again on the next installment of STEAM Get More Listings.